Next question. Is there such a thing as good imagination, the kind that leads to creativity? Or would we call that something different? So I think this stems from the post that we made, was it today or yesterday? Father Seraphim Rose, and I think I have it here. So let's read it. It says, in conversation, Father Seraphim explained that the use of imagination in Western spiritual systems of meditation, vis-a-vis while saying the Rosary, reciting the Stations of the Cross, or doing the spiritual exercises of Ignatius of Loyola, was not compatible with Orthodox spirituality and was forbidden because imagination came into use only after the fall of Adam and Eve. It is one of the lowest functions of the soul and the favorite playground of the devil, who can and does use human imagination in order to deceive and mislead even well-meaning people. That's the quote we put on the internet today, and I know there's a lot of people reacting. Mostly Roman Catholics probably are reacting because they're praying the Rosary, they're doing the Stations of the Cross, they might be doing the spiritual exercises of Ignatius of Loyola. Father Seraphim's saying something really simple and basic in the Orthodox patristic literature. He's not saying something strange or bizarre here. Very basic. All right. So imagination, when the use of imagination in prayer is not compatible with Orthodox spirituality and was forbidden because imagination came into use only after the fall of Adam and Eve. So my question to you is, anything else come into use after the fall of Adam and Eve besides imagination? What do we got? Let's think of something. A lot of people don't know this. Sexual relations came in after the fall. Did you know that? I've heard Orthodox priests say that's not true. Yes, it is. There was no sexual relations before the fall. They lived as brother and sister. They were not having relations before the fall. So what happens to the relations? Does God just say, it's part of the fall, nothing we can do about it? Or does he redeem it, bless it, and give it, even in the fall, the blessing of the Lord? Clearly he blessed marriage. And marriage clearly has at the heart of it the continuation of the race of man in childbearing. And that's inseparable from the intimacy and the unity of the couple. Those two things are together, right? So the Lord, even though things are the result of the fall, he can and does make use of them for and redeems them. Now, the imagination is not to be used during prayer. That's very clear from the patristic teaching. It is very dangerous. If you start imagining things, you will fall into delusion almost certainly. You don't, and you reject it. In fact, if you read the writings of St. Joseph the Hesychist and all the great hesychists and all the great warriors of the spirit, they say absolutely do not believe your dreams, do not believe visions, do not accept these things, do not try to encourage them and bring them on, do not seek them out, right? Does that mean they don't have visions? No, they have them. Does that mean the dreams are never, ever, ever used by the Lord? They are. So how do we discern? Well, that's a whole lecture that I can't give you right now, and we'd have to pour over the text of the fathers. But there is a discernment, a clear discernment between that which is of God from, for instance, the dreams we have dreams in the scriptures, right? And we have in the lives of the saints where they're not really asleep, they're kind of half asleep, and then they have these visions, they have these appearances of saints. We have Saint Ephraim of Katonakia, for instance, just celebrated his memory on the new calendar, February 27th, 2 days ago. And he saw the Lord just like Abraham saw him. He said 3 were coming at him, and in the middle was Christ, and he embraced Christ. And there's a video online, you can watch it. And it's actually, I think, got English subtitles. Elder Saint Ephraim, Elder Ephraim of Katonakia, weeping, remembering the vision of Christ that he had. All right, so he went immediately to his spiritual father and said, "Is this of God?" And the spiritual father said, "This is of God, and this is the beginning of a spiritual life and grace that you have yet to imagine," he said to Saint Joseph the Hesychist. So there are times for those few that God blesses, and we're almost in all humility, we have to admit we are not those people, right? We are weak. We are worldly. We are slothful. We don't pray nearly as much. So we're assuming immediately, who am I for God to come to visit me? Who am I for God to appear to me, right? So immediately we're going to stand and say, nope, that's not of God, because I am unworthy for God to come in. He went to Joseph and he went to the various, right? He appeared to the righteous and the saints, but I'm not a saint. I'm not righteous. So I immediately reject that as a temptation. And the saints say, God will come again and again to make it very clear. He'll speak through your spiritual father. He'll come. If it's really of God, your rejection of it will not be taken, let's say, wrongly. The Lord will praise, actually, the humble man who says, no, I can't possibly have Saint so-and-so appear to me. So the stance of the saints with regard to imagination in the realm of prayer is very clear. They reject it during prayer. Now, can they use it do they imagine things? In other words, literally what the word means, to put an image in front, like create an image in your mind. Yeah, of course, we do that all the time. We do that constantly. Is that condemned? No, it's not condemned. It'd be like condemning our life. Like we're constantly having images in our mind, whether awake or asleep, we create these images in our mind. That's not absolutely rejected, right? Obviously. But we don't cultivate it. We don't use it during prayer. And I would say that one of the things I think is problematic is when we see it being cultivated and used in education with small children. I don't see that as a good idea. So, for instance, I would teach personally, and I have, if you've seen my lectures on this, not to introduce to children under the age of, let's say, 15 or 13, these very imaginative tales that are very impressive, like Tolkien or C.S. Lewis. I would not personally encourage them. Why? Because I don't want them to cultivate the imagination and then live in this imaginative world and then have a difficulty going and praying, right? First and foremost, lay down the prayer life. The first 5 to 10 years of the life should be two things: prayer and the lives of the saints. Reality. Hard, fast reality. We want to live in reality because reality is God. When am I not in reality? When I'm full of pride. The proud man is in delusion. He's not in reality. Who's in reality? The humble man. We don't want to cultivate in our little children imagination, which brings them into a fantasy world. And then they're going to have difficulty going into prayer, right? Should you later on use allegory and all the as teaching methods for older children? I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it should be cultivated before prayer, in the place of prayer, and in the place of the reality of the lives of the saints. So what happens today is that we think the saints' lives and the miracles and all that happens is fanciful in mythology, and then we become enamored with mythology and the Tolkien and the rest. What? There's something wrong here. We don't have the right order of things, right? So this is what's going on today. There's a lot of confusion, and you have to walk that royal path, that middle way of understanding when and how. There's no easy, quick answer. Everybody wants a quick black and white rejection, acceptance. No imagination. No. There is limited in this time, in this space. We use it pedagogically, but for prayer, which should be our bread and butter, which is our daily life, right? We do not cultivate the imagination. Right? Hopefully that answers you, and the hierarchy of things is very clear to you. What we should give to our children is very clear to you, and not be taken in by this even the so-called classical education of the West, which does not have these distinctions. It doesn't seem to apply these things to their spiritual life. I mean, Western Christians, largely what I just told you, I don't think would necessarily agree with, or they're not hearing it for the most part. There might be exceptions. And so we're in this climate which is not Orthodox, and we're sucking in and breathing in these ways, and we might be undermined in our spiritual life because of it. We are undermined many times. If you cultivate the imagination and you live in, there are people who want to live in that world. Like they're escaping into that world. Many people by many children. What do you think all the gaming and all the incessant like binging on movies and all that? It's escape from reality. That kind of escape from reality, that kind of imagination, that kind of cultivation is very destructive to the spiritual life, right? But having images in our mind about, from icons or from, as a writer of a book or something, that's not to be rejected. As long as it's understood properly in its proper context and that the hierarchy is kept. That would be my answer. I don't know. Take it or leave it.